pacificaprogressives.com, pacificaprogressives.com. You will see the link there and you should be able to get into the meeting. Again, my apologies for all the difficulties. Good evening and welcome to this community meeting. My name is Suzanne Moore, member of Pacifica Housing for All, who is the host of tonight's event. Pacifica Housing for All is a local team of housing advocates. We are passionate in our belief that housing is a human right and necessary for life, health, and well-being. We believe housing is a cornerstone of a strong community and believe that people need to be housed in order to bring about changes that will empower them to reach their full potential. A few weeks ago, neighbors from District 1 approached us for additional information on Pacifica's homeless. So we reached out to our experts and asked them to speak. Recognizing that information on Pacifica's unhoused is important for our entire community, we expanded our invitation citywide. And so I am truly hoping that Jason has been able to manage to find us and that he's going to be able to put Pacific Coast Television and televise this event and make it possible for it to be available to our larger community. Here's what to expect this evening. We're going to be starting with a 10-minute video and following with presentations of our guest speakers. ICPCT Live, thank you, Jason. And so we're going to be starting with a 10-minute video and following with presentations of our guest speakers, who are Anita Reese of our Pacifica Resource Center, Laura Bent from San Mateo County Samaritan House, and Pastor Paul Baines from Project We Hope. We'll be finishing with a few concluding remarks, and we hope to be done probably about 8
This looks like it's us.
I think it is. How do we let everybody in?
And we are very pleased to be showing for the first time. We might want to mute everybody.
There are any newcomers.
Do that or lost
folks, mute, please.
How you guys doing?
Okay, so who do we think it is?
I say mute everybody.
We're going to be doing a couple different things.
Everybody can mute.
Like I promised you guys at the end of last.
I think it's Eileen.
Looks like Eileen.
Okay, thank you for that. So we're going to start this evening. We are very pleased to be showing for the first time a short video about 3 Pacifica residents, members of our community who lost their housing but did not lose their hope. The vision of the video is that together, in collaboration with Pacifica Resource Center, the Churches of Pacifica and City of Pacifica, we can have a positive impact on the unhoused in our hometown. We are honored to share the stories of Monique Barr, Leslie Baudet, and Matt Millard. Thank you also to Eileen Barcy, a member of the Pastoral Council of St. Peter's Church, representing the faith community. Most especially, we want to thank Alexandra Lacey, our talented videographer, People's Alliance of San Mateo County, and members of PH4A who made this video possible. Deep gratitude to all of you for your courage and this message of hope, and may the message point the way to a better future for the most vulnerable in our community. And now, our video.
And please let me know if there's any problems.
Due to the rise in home costs and rent in our community, there has been a rise in the number of homeless living on the coast side and people who are now vehicularly housed. In the recent survey that was done about those who are living in their vehicles, 10 of 12 came forward as saying Pacifica's their hometown. So this has been where they have lived.
I moved here. My parents bought a house when I was 2, 1970. I've been here ever since.
I bought my first home here in Lindenmar, and I lost it in the housing crisis back in 2008. I moved to an apartment here in Sharp Park and got run out in 2017 when my rent was actually doubled.
I've spent 1,115 days living on the street in my RV. I've made great strides and efforts to find my hope, be sufficient, proactive for myself, and get myself out of the situation I'm in. Everything that I have today is in Pacifica, and to have to move out of town would disconnect me from all my services and from my community. I'd have to rebuild, and it would set me way back.
I was born and raised in Pacifica. I've lived here my entire life. I am a UC Santa Cruz graduate. I also attended Skyline Community College and Terra Nova High School. I am now currently living in Pacifica and working for the Boys and Girls Club. I still know so many people here. I can see my cousins, and anytime I leave the house, I have just a connection to this place that I can't describe, but I love it.
I'm her mother, native born, went also to Terra Nova High School. Because we lost everything. That was pretty much a shock because it came on so unexpectedly. That's why I tell people you never know if it could happen to you. You just never know.
Yeah. At that point, our rent was so expensive and getting more and more expensive that we did not have the funds to pay it. So we were evicted. At that point, we had two options, either to start living in an RV or go to a homeless shelter. So we tried homeless shelters first, immediately got sick, violently ill. Staff simply told us, that's what happens when you come here, everyone gets it. And that's when my mom made the decision to leave the shelters and try the RV housing instead.
But living in the RV is hard. It's not people think it is, and nobody likes to live that way. Nobody wants to live that way.
The one story I tell all the time is when I first moved into my RV, I had 5 gallons of water, and I thought I was pretty set. It was gone in less than 2 days, and that became a real problem. I think the biggest thing for me was not just vigilance, but hyper-vigilance, being super aware of your surroundings, the noises outside, all times of the day, all times of the night. So I wanted to stay off the radar and not be that one that people were pointing fingers to.
You try to be invisible. You really do.
Because you're ashamed. Even though you didn't do anything wrong, they still make you feel ashamed, and you carry that with you for a long time. It really messes with your head, your self-esteem, and then it would bug me because people say, oh, to get a job. Well, it's not so easy to just go get a job if you haven't had a shower in a week, you know?
When we were living in our RV that was parked on Rosita, we noticed that there were holes in our windshield from a BB gun. There's a lot of active harassment and aggression. We're hearing about people being confronted, people being stalked who live in RVs, and on Nextdoor, neighbors asking, like, we need to know who these people are. We demand to know who's living in these RVs. So we used to park our RV right there because it seemed the most out of the way. We weren't parking directly in front of someone's house, and we had all this forest right next to us. We were following 72-hour rules, but apparently people had been complaining. We had no idea. One morning we just pulled up to the RV and it was being towed. We had left to get breakfast and use a restroom. We came back and saw police cruisers and a tow truck towing our RV away.
So the officers gave us until the tow trucks arrived to get all our stuff out. So I was just throwing it all out on the sidewalk.
So as I was watching the RV get towed, my mom tried to negotiate with the police what was going on. Someone came out from the townhouses and completely ignored me and my mother and proceeded to thank the officers for towing our RV. Really just turned a blind eye to the fact that a family had just lost their housing. Losing our RV meant losing the only shelter that we had and potentially losing all of our belongings and being completely uprooted again.
That was a quiet ride to school because we didn't know. I didn't want her to ask us where we were going to be after we got picked up or where we were going to sleep that night or anything because I didn't have any answers for her at the time. Yeah.
One of the initiatives proposed has been permitted parking for those individuals who are willing to work with the Pacifica Resource Center on a pathway to more permanent housing. We were asked if each of the clergy could support an initiative that would allow for safe parking in one of our lots. We've each been asked if we could support 2 families or individuals at a time who are currently vehicularly housed. So we would welcome the stranger in.
My opinion is that there's a handful of people that need help psychologically, financially, food, and otherwise. And they've lost hope, and they're barely just staying above water. Given a nice, safe place to stay, those people would rise up and they'd find their hope just like me. And it was really difficult for me, but I know some people out there that would be able to do the same thing I did. It would help out a lot of people.
So if we had a safe parking program, then everyone could focus on, what they need to focus on, whatever barriers they have to having housing. And how many people live in this town? And it just takes 2 people just to have someone to give you a little hope back, someone to believe in you, and it can change your whole life.
And it's sad. I'm very prideful of this town, and I would love for leadership to address housing insecurity and show some heart.
Here at St. Peter's, I know it has been a paramount issue to determine what it is we can do to support our neighbors in need, especially those who have had the humility to step forward and say, I need help.
It seems like there is an incredible hesitation towards empathy, which I find very disheartening and disappointing in leaders of this city. They're attacking and kind of perpetuating the fear-mongering around people living in the RVs. They're not helping it, they're hurting.
The issue was serious before COVID-19. And since COVID-19, it has become extremely serious. There has been a moratorium on evictions, but should the evictions begin to take place in earnest, we were going to see far more people on the street. It could be us tomorrow. This is going to take collaboration across our city, and so we're eager to partner with the Pacifica Resource Center, with our city government, with our police department, and with our businesses here in Pacifica in order to make it the place we all believe it to be, which is a heavenly place on earth.
So I think that we are now up for Gloria to introduce Anita. Are you there, Cynthia?
Yeah. I'm just sorry. It's a little tricky, so I'm just getting the slideshow back up again.
Gloria, you're on me. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I just got up. What impresses me about Anita is that she's very dedicated and committed to helping low-income and underrepresented families and individuals in Pacifica by providing them with access to resources so that they can become stable and economically secure. Anita joined the PRC in 2010, and in 2013, she saw homelessness was very prevalent in Pacifica, so much so that she did a report with a professor from Sonoma State University. Anita found that Pacifica had the second highest numbers in San Mateo County on homelessness. Also recently, she was a leader on the city's task force unhoused in Pacifica. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Anita Reese, Executive Director of the PRC. Go ahead, Anita.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button for some reason. So again, Anita Reese with the Pacifica Resource Center. We have
come up a lot tonight is going to be conscience. And can I have
somebody needs to go on mute? So we've been in Pacifica for since 1974, and if you can go to the next to one of the slides, Cynthia? Are you going to do them?
Yep. So just tell me, and I'll move them along.
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead and go to the start of my slides, please.
Wasn't that the first slide? This one here?
The community meeting on Pacifica Homeless is what I see on the screen.
Seriously? Oh yeah. Dear. Okay. Sorry. So somehow I have the wrong screen that I'm sharing. I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button for some reason. So again, Anita Reese, the Pacifica Resource Center. We have really weird.
I'm so sorry. Just give me a minute.
I can share my screen if that's easier.
Sure, that'd be great, Anita, and then I'll get back to it later. That would be
no problem.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Give me 1 second. Can y'all see it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So Pacifica Resource Center, we've been around since 1974. Our mission is to help support the economic security of Pacifica families and individuals by providing a safety net of food, housing assistance, and other critical services. And basically, we want to make sure that everybody in Pacifica has their basic needs met so that folks have the opportunity to thrive, whatever that means for them. This just gives you a sense of the breadth of our work. We have assisted 1 in 10 Pacifica families over the last year, specifically around groceries that benefited 30,000 Pacifica families, children, adults, and seniors. That is duplicated because oftentimes folks come back for more services and support. We prevented homelessness and sheltered 179 Pacificans, prepared taxes, increasing folks' disposable incomes and bringing those resources and funds back into the community. We helped 168 Pacifica youth get prepared for the new school year. We provide holiday services and support for both Christmas and Thanksgiving for youth and families throughout the community. And then we also have a shower program and have been providing showers to unhoused folks in Pacifica for the past 3 years. Last year, nearly 500 showers to different folks, helping them prepare for work and job interviews, housing search, whatever it is that they need. I wanted to give a sense of what homelessness means for folks who don't realize that it's not just folks who are living on the streets. It is basically anybody who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. This does include outside vehicles. It also includes couch surfing. So folks who don't have a regular place to sleep at night and could lose their housing at any time are also considered literally homeless. The other category is imminent risk of homelessness, which generally is within 14 days of losing their housing. So somebody who gets a 3-day notice to pay or quit potentially is an imminent risk of becoming homeless as well. There's some other statutes under federal guidelines, which we rarely come across, and then fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence is also considered homeless. So this just gives you a sense of the change over time in Pacifica. So you can see back in 2007, when we do a 1-day homeless count every 2 years. In 2007, we had 7. You can see the highest number we had was in 2013, which is part of why we put out the report Homeless in Pacifica in 2013, because we saw such a significant increase. And then you can see that it dropped in 2015 and started to rise back up in 2017 and has stayed pretty steady over the last couple of years. In 2018, we did a special additional one with the county. They selected 5 different sites to do the 1-day homeless count, just to sort of check in on some of the areas that had the highest number. But you can see over time that the number of folks who are unhoused in Pacifica has grown. This is a breakdown of where and how folks have been unhoused over the last couple of years. You can see that the motorhome number has increased pretty significantly. It went from 28 to 46 to 88. Encampments and on street are pretty low for Pacifica in general. Most of our folks have been in vehicles. These are our core homeless services that PRC provides: groceries, shower program, as I mentioned, homeless supplies, coordinated entry and diversion referrals, which Laura will talk a bit more about, inclement weather program, which is referrals into shelter during the winter season and when there is inclement weather. Housing center case management for those who are referred to us. That this is something that we do now in-house and have been doing for the last 3 to 6 months. Housing assistance, so once somebody has found housing, we can help with move-in and deposit costs, and then other critical services, bus tickets, laundry, medication, and advocacy. So one of the things that we did with the county was a survey of folks who were in motorhomes. I'm not going over all of the specifics, but these were some of the highlights about the 22 households that we surveyed. And this was a year ago. So things, obviously, folks are in motorhomes, they can move and they move along and new people may come in. But for the most part, this is a good indication of what we've seen over time. So mostly adults in Pacifica with just one family that had a family under the age of 18. You can also see here that most of the folks who are in motorhomes are older. They're anywhere, but the highest number is 40 to 54, but you can see there's a pretty significant number of 55 to 69 and also one person who is over 70. In terms of where they came from before they were in Pacifica, 41% were from Pacifica, 41% were from out of county, and 18% were from San Mateo County, but not in Pacifica. And the reasons for folks living in motorhomes were primarily high cost of rent, conflict with families. So maybe they were living with their families and then they were asked to leave. Evictions also there. There's only 3 folks, 12% were a lifestyle choice. So they chose to live in their motorhome because they wanted to live a more nomadic life. So in terms of their income, 76% had employment, and their average employed earnings from employment was $27.35. So again, given the high cost of living in Pacifica or in San Mateo County, it's really not enough to make ends meet to be able to rent a place and live here. So in terms of residency by household, 76% lived in their motorhome every night. There were a few folks who maybe stayed with their family or friends occasionally and motorhome sometimes, or elsewhere in motorhome. And then you can see the more than 50% of the folks that we surveyed had been in their motorhome for 12 months or more. So in terms of their ultimate goal, 63% only saw motorhome as a temporary solution, and they wanted to move into regular or permanent housing. And again, you can see that the folks who were planned to live in their motorhome long-term was for only those 3 folks, so 14%. So in terms of the strategies that PRC has worked on, given what was possible on the coast, because there are no shelters on the coast. Back in 2016, the county did a feasibility study on a congressional rotational shelter. So this idea was that folks would rotate from one church to another for a week, 2 weeks at a time, and then go to the next one. And so folks this would be shelter. So we tested this idea back in February of 2017 at a local church for one night. We had 3 homeless folks who slept inside and 4 vans and 1 RV in the church parking lot. We sort of added the safe parking component because it was really only meant to be a shelter inside. But because we saw that there was an increase in the number of folks who were living in vehicles, and this particular church had a good size parking lot, we could do this. And one of the things that we found was that all of the overnight guests said that it was the best night's sleep that they had in years because they didn't have to be worried. We had breakfast together, we had dinner together, we had breakfast together. We brought folks back to the office to use the shower and get food from the pantry. And I believe every single person one person is not housed currently, but every person who stayed in that one night is now housed. So there are, positive outcomes from non-traditional options. So back in July, the county did request a proposal for a rotating shelter on the coast, but unfortunately didn't award a contract. So there was definitely some momentum, but there wasn't enough that actually resulted in a rotating shelter. So since then, PRC has worked on trying to gain some community support so that should the opportunity arise again, we would be able to, not we as in PRC, but we'd be able to entice a service provider to manage a rotating shelter or some other shelter program. So in January, we tested it again for one night. At that time, only one person stayed with us. We did work very hard to try to find others who would be willing to stay, but unfortunately, that community had some negative or had some serious concerns, and many of the folks that we were reaching out to had picked up on those concerns and chose not to stay with us. But with that one person, again, any person we were able to get housed even for one night was a success in our eyes. And so we had, he shared that that it was the first time he had had a hot home cooked meal, that connection was really important for him. And then after breakfast, again, we transferred him back to PRC. He took a shower. We were able to work with him on a housing assistance program or a housing assistance application to try to get him into the housing that he had secured, but hadn't been able to move into because he didn't have the money for a deposit. The next thing, which had come up already, was a safe parking program for vehicularly housed folks. This was in response to the oversized vehicle ordinance that passed in January and has been implemented and enforced as of September 15th. So this came about because the Unhoused in Pacifica Task Force researched various options, and they proposed a safe parking permitted program because they couldn't find a location for an actual, all in one place safe parking program that would work. So PRC developed a permitted parking program that included a combination of private and public parking spaces that were pre-COVID. So everything sort of stopped once COVID happened, and it sort of came back up in July. So to be part of this project, folks would need to develop a housing plan with PRC and commit to receiving case management services. So on July 15th, city manager asked for direction from City Council at a special meeting. Unfortunately, there wasn't any consensus for the use of public streets because at that time we didn't have any private spaces that were 100% able to commit, although we did have St. Peter who was willing to pursue it, which was awesome. And we were very happy and excited to try to move that forward. So at that time, the council wasn't able to reach consensus for the use of public streets, but they were open to private property owners, in particular churches, to host those vehicles. And as I mentioned, we had one church that was willing to test it with us. September 14th, that city council, again, city manager asked for direction on the private property sites. And unfortunately, there wasn't any consensus for the property owner sites. And so at that point, a safe parking program, as it had been considered up to this point, ended, at least with the city support currently. So one of the things that I just wanted to mention is as I mentioned before, we do have successes, and unfortunately it's really challenging for us to share those successes because of confidentiality. But I do have two stories that I can share with you all. Obviously names have been changed. In the first situation, Tracy and Steve, they were unhoused in Pacifica for most of the last 5 years. They were actually matched with our program, our Unhoused on the Coast outreach program. And through that matching and through through coordinated entry and being part of the group of folks to be considered for other housing supports, they were matched with the permanent supportive housing voucher, which basically means it's a lifetime voucher that helps cover the cost of their housing so that they can move from homelessness into stable housing. So we were able to help them complete the application. We provided transportation to and from HSA, Social Security, DMV, whatever it was that they needed to collect all of the required documents, because it's not like someone just gives you a voucher and that's done. They still have to go through the assessment process and be eligible and be accepted into the program. So they were granted the voucher, then COVID. So then it was a lot harder to find housing for them at that point. Many of the supports that were out there were unable to really assist them in looking for housing. So they were really needing to do that on their own, but staff was able to help them find housing as well. So took them to housing appointments to check out different apartments to see what would work and what they would be eligible and qualify for. So during that time, we put them up in a hotel with some specific funding that private funding that we received during COVID to help folks who were unhoused and weren't able to get into shelter or were shelter averse, so that we could help to keep them more healthy, right? Because as we've seen, or as we saw in the video, folks are 5 times more likely to contract COVID if they're unhoused. So after 2 months of searching, they found an apartment, they were able to move in, and now they're in their own apartment after 5 years of living on the streets. The second example is somebody who was living in their motorhome in Pacifica. They received one of our outreach flyers, and from that, they came into PRC for support. We learned that they were pregnant and they really wanted to find stable housing. They wanted to be off the streets before their child was born. So we provided them groceries, case management. Curtis went and looked for work. He found a good paying job in the trades and found a place to live. We then worked with them because while they had enough money to pay their rent, they didn't have enough money to pay the deposit. And since they didn't have a long, rental history, deposits were higher. So we did ask for a higher amount to support them in getting into their home. And now, they're living in their new home and they were able to get there before the baby's due date and, happily, stably housed, which was always their intent. They were not interested in living in their motorhome forever. They were using it as a temporary housing option. So as I mentioned, we have our Unhoused on the Coast program. If anybody comes across somebody who's in Pacifica or along the coast through Half Moon Bay, we have outreach specialists who are available to support them, connect them to services, and ultimately get them assessed so that they could be eligible for our other county services that are only offered if people go through the coordinated entry and diversion system, which Laura from Samaritan House will share more about.
So my name is Delia McGrath, and I will have the pleasure of introducing Laura Bent, our next speaker. And this is a happy assignment because I just met her on Zoom last night, but I'm so impressed with Laura and her resume, which is awesome. She is currently the Chief Operating Officer for Samaritan House, leading the organization's client services, food services, and safe harbor shelter programs. She is also responsible for the organization's program data and facilities management operations. And in addition, she has great responsibility for the community development efforts on behalf of the organization. Laura previously served as the Director of Programs and Services for Samaritan House. She is a retired executive of the YMCA movement, and with a 30-plus year career as a nonprofit professional, and she's been volunteering in a variety of levels for over 20 years. There is much more, but I'm going to jump to something at the end of her little bio, which I think fits in with tonight's program. She lives by the philosophy that each person should be the change they wish to see in this world. We're lucky to have Laura with us this evening. She'll be presenting good information about the coordinated entry system and other aspects of her very wide experience in the whole issue of homelessness and helping people get housed. Laura, are you there?
I am, and thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. I want to say thank you to everybody who's here tonight as well, and share my deep appreciation for everyone's passion and interest in supporting those who are living vulnerably in our communities. It takes a village to wrap around folks who are in need, and I appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to go through this information, better understand the needs, and hopefully take some action. So thank you again for being here tonight. I'm here just, to speak about sort of the homeless system and the homeless approach for San Mateo County, not representing the county, but representing Samaritan House, who is one of the partners of San Mateo County in the vision and the mission of getting our folks housed. And we are, at Samaritan House, the operator of the coordinated entry system, which I will introduce and explain in a bit. If we could go to the next slide, I think you've seen some numbers. I think the video did a wonderful job of representing sort of the numbers and the stories of the folks who are Pacificans and those who are struggling with their housing. Could we move to the next slide, or? Are we struggling to move the slides along? I could try to share mine.
So I'm sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So my screen showed me advancing, and so I'm not quite sure what's gone wrong here. So let me try.
You just did it. So maybe you have to use your mouse and just click on the.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
No, interesting.
It's showing it advance. Did it advance?
This is a great slide. No, this is a great slide, but I can talk through the other. So
then I think maybe you're going to have to show your own slides. I have no idea why what's happening with Zoom here. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to try. I'm working on an iPad, so that might be a little difficult.
Maybe if you put it into slideshow mode, Cynthia, and you.
That's what I did.
Well, it doesn't look like it's in slideshow mode.
Laura, do you want to send it to me by email and I'll share it on my screen? This
Sure.
is Anita.
Yes.
Great. And then I'm going to send Pastor Baines' ones as well.
Just to get ahead of it. But so we've seen some of the numbers at this point in terms of the homeless in our county. And a few years ago, the county made a decision. Anita, I just sent it to you.
Okay.
The county made a decision to move to a centralized system by which folks had equal, fair, and equitable access to all of the services for homeless individuals and families in the county. That was a huge lift for a county that had great partners who have been operating a little bit differently in the community. So we had the opportunity at Samaritan House to work with the core agencies, and I'll discuss the core agencies in a few minutes as well, to really try to centralize the process around getting folks access to the multiple services that are available in the county. And that is what is called the coordinated entry system. And so the services provided, and there's the one-day homeless count numbers, which Anita shared specific to Pacifica, but that's sort of the county overall look. And then Anita, if we can go to the next one. Thank you for getting that up, Anita. If we could go to the next one.
Do you not see the locations of unsheltered persons in 2019 count? Huh, weird.
See, that's what happened to me too. And I saw it on my screen, it showed it advancing.
How about that? No?
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me try something else.
So the coordinated entry system, just to keep give everybody sort of the background on that or the information around it. Basically, again, it's one fair and equitable process through many doors because San Mateo County is very large. We had to come up with the system that would give everyone access in the locations or their service areas. There we go. The services in the area by which they live, or at least are close to where they live. So I'll talk about this screen for just a second, but you can see in the 2019 one-day homeless count, and Anita talked about the rapid growth of the folks who are living in vehicles, but you can see the red represents people who are living in cars. The blue represents the people living on the streets, and the gray represents people living in RVs. So that was a significant jump from the 2017 count. And we've done some interviews around the county, and Anita spoke specifically about Pacifica in terms of identifying these folks and understand that if their RVs are on the streets of the city, the likelihood is that they are from that city and that's where their service connections are. And so they are considered residents of that area. Most of them were residents of the area previously and had to move into a vehicularly housed situation. Anita, if you can go to the next slide. This slide specifically speaks to the big change or the big lift that we made a few years ago with coordinated entry. So this speaks to the access, which again is through the core network agencies that operate as one unit that are all individual nonprofits, but we operate as one unit in terms of providing services very similar to what Anita described. All of the services are provided through these 7 different agencies at this point. So folks come through the doors of the core agencies, but the experience is no different, depending on, regardless of the door they jump in through. So most folks who have a housing situation or an issue with being homeless will access through the core agency. They will work with a case manager in the core agency who then refers them to a diversion specialist that is employed by Samaritan House, but we work very closely with all the core agencies. Therefore, we have specialists in every core agency to provide services. Essentially, the diversion specialist then spends time connecting with the client, getting to understand the history and their story, so to speak, asks many questions around what resources they have available to them. So their first focus is to work through understanding the resources that a client has. Do they have a family member that they could live with? Do they have a family member out of state that they could go to? Where's their support network? And coordinated entry has flexible funding that can support folks to live with someone, to take the burden off the household because it is an expense to take someone into your home. We have funding where we can support childcare so that someone can go to work, to support their housing. We have funding to support moving someone back to where they are from so that they can be with their support network, and we connect them with that support network and make sure that they are welcome there. So that's the first point that the diversion specialist focuses on. The second point is the intervention. And the intervention is after we've processed and gone through everything and tried to identify resources for folks. If we cannot identify, what we will do is fill out what's called a housing index and put forth a recommendation to be placed in emergency shelter or any other resources that are available. So we work very closely with all of the shelter providers in the county. We actually place folks in the shelter beds in the county once we've identified that that is the only opportunity available for a client. And then we will make the referral and make sure that they get to the shelter, at which point then the case managers in the shelter take over. Ultimately, the goal in the green there, of course, is permanent housing. Now, there's many things that happen in between, including the work that, you know, Anita was talking about, bringing resources to bear to help folks at least set up a housing plan. The other part of coordinated entry is also automatically, once we put the vulnerability index into play and understand just how chronically homeless someone has been, the county then picks up the information and can support getting someone a housing voucher. And there's various vouchers that have various levels of eligibility, and there's a system in place where they are identified and matched. And then the county will contact the shelter and give someone the opportunity to get the voucher in place. Anita, if you could go to the next slide. So these are all of the various interventions. Our first and foremost, our wishful and hopeful thing is that we have the opportunity to work with a family prior to homelessness, and we have homelessness prevention. There's quite a bit of money, especially during COVID, that has been put forth in emergency financial assistance to keep people housed, because we all understand that that is the most economical way to support a family. It becomes much more expensive and extensive once someone is unhoused. Again, I talked about diversion and coordinated entry. That's the way through to enter into the system. There is much outreach and engagement that happens. That's part of the intervention. Again, once somebody is housed, Pastor Baines will talk about the services they provide in the safe parking, but that's a lot of outreach and engagement. People come together to work with the clients, again, for a housing plan and to remove the barriers to housing. We have our shelter and entrant housing systems. We have a housing location service through many other partners. There's housing locator services. Once someone is ready to be housed, we can assist them and find the housing. There's a rapid rehousing program that's typically for folks who are just becoming homeless. They've come out of a housing situation. Typically, they can get back in very quickly with some short-term emergency financial assistance and support and case management. There's permanent supportive housing. Again, that's the voucher system that we get identified, and the county connects with us to tell us that there's a voucher available. And then all folks go into what's called the HMIS Clarity System, where we can, as one county, see the full story of a client. Everybody enters into that system. So regardless of where they end up in the county, you can see their story. The case manager can understand what has happened with the family without having to re-traumatize them and ask them for the information all over again. And then there's planning, safety net, homelessness coordination. So we have a number of agencies that come together to work with folks in terms of mental health, medical well-being, and so forth. So there's lots of intervention that can happen. And all of the positives of someone becoming permanently housed are as a result of all of the various resources that come to bear when someone is connected into our system. Anita, if you could go to the next one. So again, I talked about the core service agencies. This is a list of the 7 agencies that are, again, independent nonprofits working together as a network to provide safety net services and access to the homeless system or the housing system within the county. We each have our own areas that we serve, but again, we are one united network that comes together to really wrap around and help a family who is in need. We will often work together, as we are right now, with our emergency financial assistance to make sure that someone can get into housing or maintain their physical health and well-being, transportation, pay their utility bills. We work very closely as a network to make sure that folks can get into housing, but those who are in housing remain housed. Next one, Anita. And I think that's just a slide again of the core service agencies in the various locations. I will end on a note of saying that we were honored 2 years ago to be asked to work in East Palo Alto and Menlo Park. That brought us closer together with Pastor Paul Baines in our work together down in East Palo Alto. We work very closely again, as someone will walk through our office door and likely end up, if they need a shelter, in Pastor Baines' shelter right next door. So that just shows you how closely our networks come together. And we work very closely with him in the safe parking program as well, in that we will get staff out there to work with his staff team, if necessary, to wrap around a family and again support them with the goal of permanent housing. And I will end there. I'm happy to answer questions later or now or whenever Suzanne thinks it's appropriate. Thank you, Anita.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Carolyn Jaramillo, and my privilege tonight is to introduce another tremendous, remarkable advocate for homeless and marginalized people, the president and co-founder of Project We Hope, Pastor Paul Baines. Project We Hope is located in East Palo Alto and San Mateo County. Its mission is to help people become healthy, employed, and housed using innovative solutions. Pastor Baines is recognized as a tireless, transformative leader whose actions and collaborative efforts have built successful programs by meeting people where they are and dignifying who they are. Project We Hope includes a 55-bed shelter for homeless adults, including services to help them return to self-sufficiency, a job training program, Dignity on Wheels, which provides mobile showers, laundry services, and outreach. And also the only safe parking program in the county, which addresses the increase in people living in RVs. First, by providing them safety and sanitation, thereby enabling them to work on other issues that keep them from permanent housing. Pastor Baines has become the driving force behind these compassionate programs by building relationships with all sectors of the community. So, Pastor Baines, please, can you tell us how you do it? We hope.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Hopefully you can hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Also, thank you to Anita and Laura, for they do tremendous work. We are together in various county meetings and at various other places. And it's good to have strategic partners that have the same passion and innovative skills to really help the marginalized. That being said, I don't want to be too redundant for what has already been spoken on. And this is probably my 7th or 8th Zoom call today, and I haven't eaten. So hopefully as a preacher, I won't be too long here. I don't see the slides up, so it just has the one slide. Okay.
Then Anita, can you do it again? I'm so sorry. I tried one more time.
Okay, I see so basically, while we have a variety of programs, we help other people excel. We are in 4 counties and 16 cities, and we have about 10 different programs. But the one that you've asked me to speak on, and I do want to say that we're not I don't know if we're the only RV safe parking program in San Mateo County. I know we were the first in the country to establish RV safe parking program, and we shared it with everyone across the country, actually, along with our mobile hygiene services, Dignity on Wheels. And we actually are about 173-bed shelter now, because we opened up a shelter in San Francisco, and we have 73 beds in East Palo Alto. Focusing on the safe parking program, and you can move the slides. I'm going to run through this. You've already heard, what are the causes of homelessness. So, loss of employment is really a big thing right now, particularly with the COVID, where we have so many people that are laid off. And I think Anita touched on this a little bit earlier, or someone did, it might have been Susan, that we are looking at a tsunami of evictions, that if the government doesn't step in and corporations and private public relationships don't step in, partnerships, the end of October, the end of January, where some of these moratoriums are going to be lifted, then we're going to have a whole new group of middle class homeless people. And so the problem is going to be exasperated if the government and private and public partnerships don't step in. You can move to the next slide. Many RV dwellers do not consider themselves homeless. If they are staying in an RV because they have all these amenities and things of that nature, when we started our program, they said, I'm not homeless. And yet it was harder to offer them services because they had some of the services that basically a car dweller doesn't have. So they were extremely resistant to wanting to come into a shelter or even receive services. Next slide, please. The automobiles, though, they were dwellers, they were very clear and they knew they needed services because they lacked the basic needs such as clean water, which the RV dwellers had. Although they were a little bit afraid to go into shelters because they've heard horror stories, I guess, historically. But they were definitely more open to than the RV dwellers to come into a shelter because they didn't have as many amenities that the RV dwellers had. And so when you're looking at the safe parking program, you're looking at two different distinct populations when it comes to vehicle dwellers. RV dwellers would be more resistant to other than car dwellers and van dwellers. Next slide, please. Our RV dwellers, some of the needs that are different here, they have to understand the instability of living in an RV. And so our auto dwellers, as you can see, they are more unstable and need that stability in their life in order to meet the needs of if it's a family or if it's an individual. And so they are less reluctant to resist the help of case management, the safety net services and things of that nature. RV dwellers often are able to cook their own food, which was a huge thing with anyone that's homeless, as we heard in the previous videos. However, auto dwellers, they can't cook their own meals because they don't typically have a kitchen or a stovetop in their vehicle. And so, those are significant differences on why people will be resistant to either accepting help and services if they live in an RV. Next slide, please. We all know about the different types of homelessness, the chronic, episodic, and cyclical. Next slide. Affective disorders, depression, anxiety, bipolar, all of that stuff, we found very few homeless were drug users. There is a big myth that most people are homeless because they are on drugs, and that's not actually true. There's data points throughout the country that counter those myths. But we do have people who may have mental illness, and they may not have started off with mental illness, but being chronically homeless for so long, they have developed mental illness health challenges. And so, that's why it's so important, though, to get people off the street. And if they are in an RV or if they're in a car, to also help provide more services for them in a safe environment. Next slide. The time spent on homeless can be related to higher levels of psychiatric distress, higher levels of alcohol use, and lower levels of perceived recovery in people with previous mental illness. They didn't always start off that way, but because they no one stepped in, leaned in to help them, they end up having a higher level of alcohol usage and things of that nature. Next slide. Safe parking programs. This is what you want to hit on. Well, the good things about safe parking programs are that, yes, they provide security. We've heard many stories of people, even with them living in their cars, particularly women, that have been attacked. People have broken in their cars and even RVs and tried to physically abuse or sexually abuse both males and females. And so safe car parking programs, they provide that security. In our particular program, it's 24/7. And so we have a guard that is there that protects. We also have cameras that we put up to help protect the RVs and the vehicles while the clients are going to work. As you heard in a previous slide, 76% of the people that were staying in vehicles had jobs. And so we don't want them to always drive their RVs around because that's just a lot of gas to, drive, a few blocks or a few miles away, but to catch public transportation and when they can leave their RV at the safe in our parking program. We also provide hygiene because we do have our mobile hygiene program, which is Dignity on Wheels, where we provide showers, we provide laundry services, case management, and of course, restrooms. And we don't do that just for our program, but that's why we are in 4 counties and 16 cities where we partner with other safe parking programs throughout those particular counties. The parking program also provides stability because then you have not just a safe place, but you're able to go there every day, 7 days a week, just like if you were in a home. And so that helps them if they're looking for, it brings a calmness to them. If they're looking for a job, they can always say, because we have mailboxes that we allow them to use our address and things of that nature. And it's an opportunity to connect with other services. Laura, Samaritan House, their staff comes out and we partner with anyone that wants to partner with the homeless so that they have access to these services. And then we can gather them together. We've cooked meals. We've had outings at the Safe Park program where we've had people come and even speak in the community of the RV dwellers, which is pretty rare, but it's something where it builds a community. And then their encouragement one to another. They each help encourage them. No, you can make it. Or this class, like we have financial literacy class that our RV dwellers go to. We have anger management class, communication class, financial literacy class. These are various classes that we teach that they actually attend to help them get back on that road to self-sufficiency. Other incentives that we've had in our program was that we provided when we made the proposal to the city of East Palo Alto, we said that these are the things before you implement a code violation for oversized parking to park overnight on the streets where people would get towed. We partnered with the city of East Palo Alto and offered, here's a solution, but we need you to partner with us. You bring in 1/3 of the cost, we'll raise the other 2/3. Or no, I think we told them they bring up 2/3 of the cost, we bring in the other 1/3. And with that was inclusive of being able to repair people's RVs, because you cannot penalize people for being homeless. That is just inhumane. And so the city graciously agreed and been a great partner with us, the city of East Palo Alto, and provided a budget specifically to help the RV dwellers with their registration, with their vehicle repairs, with DMV, so that they'll be fully operational. We also gave out gas cards and gift cards and things of that nature with people who partner with the faith-based community, partnered with us on this, and even tech partnered with us. We also made sure they had the insurance because we don't want them driving vehicles uninsured. And so all of that was the whole package and offering in our safe parking program. Next slide. When we started this program, it was a problem where the RVs, it was only less than 1% of the RV dwellers that was causing the waste that was being dumped on the street. Out of the 80 or so, 85 RVs that were in our city of East Palo Alto, just 1 or 2 RV dwellers were creating a biohazard waste. And these were people who were residents of our community. And so we end up working with them and also got the debris removed for where the RV dwellers were. And they, some of them signed up for the program. As you can see, out of the number of people currently in the program today is 12. But we started off where we had 73 are here out of the house. We got 34 of them housed within the first 3 months. We got 30% of the people housed with partnerships with Samaritan House. I think even El Concilio played a role in that. Life Moves, Bold Services, whoever would help us with our case managers to get these people housed. As you can see, some declined services and they end up moving out of the area. Our program, when we designed it, it was designed for the seniors, the RV dwellers of East Palo Alto and East Menlo Park, and veterans and families. And so that was our target market, that they had to live in East Palo Alto. We weren't building this program for others, even though other cities need help with RVs. And people would call us, but we said, no, this is for this community. And so you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that's what made our program extremely successful. Some of the challenges was we had a new development here in the city of East Palo Alto, and that new development, we've had people who moved in our community that haven't been here longer than 4 or 5 years maximum. And they were probably the ones that said, well, we don't want the RV program, in the community of East Palo Alto. Now, that's less than, we have 36,000 people in our community, and we only had about 20 residents that said, no, not in my backyard, which the city of East Palo Alto unanimously said, no, we're going to support this program. We're going to take care of our own people. And just like the young daughter said in there, where's the empathy when it comes to helping the homeless? We are very grateful that we had city council support, planning commission support, and the community support. So we had all 3 of those there, and we had very few naysayers. As I said, these were newbies in our community that were complaining the most. And there was nothing for them to complain. They just didn't want a program in the community, which they didn't realize that these RVs were already there. So, other challenges that you have, well, we had to make sure that our program was bilingual because we had non-English speaking residents in our RVs. So we had to make sure we had translation available for them. Was this something we had to address? And that's just the climate that we live in. Other challenges in the program was that We first didn't start off being 24/7. We first were just 12 hours out of the day, which was overnight. And so we petitioned with the city to make it 24/7 because it was a lot for the RV dwellers to get in their vehicles, move them, and then move them back. And so that was kind of a waste of resources, gasoline and time. And so that's what I would say was one of the challenges. But the success of the program, we've modeled it. We've helped other people start programs in other parts of the country in or Northern California and shared our best practices with others. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Pastor Baines, that is just terrific. And thank you. Thank you. Please go get some food. I feel really guilty that you have not eaten yet. I realized too that this evening has lasted a little bit longer than we all had hoped. And I so appreciate everybody hanging in there with our IT difficulties. I'm just going to quickly say that I am really amazed at that partnership and passion that exists in the strategic partners. We heard stories tonight of successes, and it is just really inspiring. For lack of time, mostly because I want everybody to get home and get food, I'm just going to say that Martin Luther King said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And we do need to let the people in our community, our city electeds know that, yes, we want solutions for our homeless, and we know there are solutions out there. I'd like to take a moment to just acknowledge everybody that made this evening possible. And I don't know if it's possible, Cynthia, to find slide number 6, but I'm just going to start naming names. First, I want to thank the neighbors of District 1 who inspired this evening. I want to thank Pacific Coast at the bottom, Jason, for hanging in there and televising this. Of course, Pacifica Housing for All, Pacifica Progressive Alliance for rolling up sleeves and trying to bring this together this evening. For our videographer, Alexandra Lacey, who devoted, I know, private time to being able to create this evening's video. And of course, those Pacifica residents who participated, Monique Barr, Eileen Barcy, Leslie Baudet, and Matt Millard. Again, thanking People's Alliance of San Mateo County for helping to make that video possible. And then our wonderful speakers, Anita Reese of the Pacifica Resource Center, Laura Bent of Samaritan House, and Pastor Paul Baines of Project We Hope. I am also just going to very quickly put up slide number 7, Cynthia, which has the websites for Pacifica Resource Center and Second Harvest. During our economic downturn, both of these wonderful services could use some additional support. And lastly, I just want to say, and we don't have to put this slide up, Cynthia, that if anyone is listening who's in need of assistance at this time, go to our website, pacificaprogressive.com. We have a list of community resources there. And we just want people to be able to utilize what is out there in our community. Also, a gentle reminder that our October edition of Pacifica Voice will be out soon. So thanks to everyone who persisted this evening. I so appreciate that. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Good night, everyone, and please take good care.
Thank you. Good night.